Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. I'm Alexis, and I'm joined by David Francisco and Alexys Moreno. This is the show that brings you everything coming out of the world of movies and more. And this week, we've got quite a doozy for you. We've got two brand new releases, one in the form of television and the other in the form of course, what we're all here to talk about, cinema. Capital C cinema, as a matter of fact. On today's show, we will be talking about the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, the complete overview, review, whatever you want to call it, of the first season. And then what we'll also be talking about is Dune Part Two, a film that we have greatly been anticipating for a long time now, and it is finally here. And it seems to have collectively changed all of our lives. So that's today's show here on Red Spotlight number 476. Guys, are you amped up to talk about what we're doing today?
Yes.
For various reasons, right?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Various reasons, exactly. Before we get started, a couple of things to plug, of course, directly referencing what David just put up on the screen, which was a copy of Frank Herbert's Dune. Remember that we have Turn to Page, which these two lovely individuals, again, they get no hate mail whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and let them take the wheel here and talk about where they're at with Turn to Page, the show that literally talks about books. It's a book club podcast that they've been doing for a couple of years now. Again, no hate mail. They don't seem to get any at all. And last we all checked with them, they were doing Dune. Did you guys get close to finishing by the time you saw part? No.
I literally
We're doing it tomorrow, and I still have 5 hours left of the audiobook.
In the book, I'm in the part where Paul and Jessica are in the desert by themselves, basically. No, they went past like the dust storm and all that. If you remember how they had to like use the dust storm to fly.
It's not in the same order as the movie, so it's kind of like we saw Austin Butler's character already, and like David is in that part. I'm kind of near that part, so it's like it's all different orders, so it's kind of hard to because like I feel like everything is happening at the same time, so they're showing us different like things.
Basically, we're still in the first part at the very least.
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes, it's really good.
Really good.
It's absolutely great. There was a scene with the Baron and Dave Bautista's character.
Rabon.
Rabon, where they were having like this conversation of like what to do next and all that, and like who they captured, what exact orders Bautista's character has to do and everything. But like just the conversation that they were having, how they were gonna like use whatever they just did to their advantage and all that. Like it's very, very interesting.
Yeah,
like I said,
it was intimidating, definitely, because I've never really read like sci-fi stuff, so I was scared. And then like the size of the book and like everything, like the text and stuff, I was like, ooh, okay. Let's go.
About how long into the text did it take you to feel like, okay, I'm gonna really like this?
Oh, like
the beginning.
Immediately. Then.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
In the beginning.
Yeah, like I mentioned before,
okay.
like just something about the writing in this like really captures me. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to like praise the shit out of this book or anything like that. I mentioned it before, like a lot of the times when I'm reading a book, I'm just sort of hovering over all the words and just getting like little bits and pieces of it to just understand what's going on in the plot and all that. But this one, like, no, every single word, like, I'm trying to pay attention to it.
It's also incredible to think about how this was being written in 1965.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, because I've even tried, I mean, I don't know, I think it was maybe around the same time. I could be completely wrong, but like I also have tried reading Lord of the Rings and stuff. So hard.
I think Tolkien's material is a little bit older, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Than the 60s. I think it's going back a while back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Peter is our resident Dune expert, and unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. He did see Dune. He loved it, obviously, and I mean Dune Part Two. And all of us, to an extent, we had yes, two of us. We did have some conversation with him, so we have some idea to pull from. But thankfully, you guys have been reading a lot of it already, so you have some of that knowledge in there to kind of like help out our conversation. But my understanding is, and I believe I made reference of this last podcast, what really made the first film extraordinary is the idea that it was coherent, because no one had been able to successfully translate that to the screen where it was coherent. Because as I'm sure you're finding out while you're reading it, you're just like, the impression that I get from everyone who has read it, and what Peter tells me is there's so much here. How the fuck do you make this into a movie? The answer is you don't, which is why they literally had this one book split into two different movies.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
there's it's so much. And then another thing that I found interesting is that, I mean, granted, we get a lot of this from books anyways, but with this one specifically, like a lot of it is like internal thoughts, internal monologues from the characters.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like actions that are happening. It's more so what the characters think and what they feel, and like, you know. So the fact that like we got these movies and they are what they are, it's so good.
It's kind of a goddamn miracle.
Yeah.
From what I gather.
And I really like that we are doing these two things, or we're talking about these two things specifically, because it's just interesting.
Did you notice that, David? Yeah? Okay. I don't know. There was a little bit of a lag there. I heard everything you said, Alexis, but I don't know. There was this really weird moment from my screen where it looked like you were like operating in like 2 times fast forward.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did the Bene Gesserit just take over this this chat? Like, it's funny. So just to keep people aware that the Dune conversation is going to continue long past tonight. You can still come back to this channel, check back turn to page, and you will see, as I'm sure you're already finding, several differences. Because Peter did say that there were a number of notable changes that were made. Because that's kind of what you do when you do an adaptation, typically speaking. So there's that. At the same time, we also have very soon-ish, I don't quite know when. I don't know, honestly, the dates for a lot of these things. First and foremost, at some point in the very near future, there will be an audio commentary / reaction to Elemental, the Disney and Pixar film that came out last year. And just a bit of a spoiler alert, that one will be far more positive than the last one that we did. I'm not sure if that really was ever in suspense, but just to put it out there in case people get tired of us bitching, that one will be far more positive. And it was fun. So at some point you will see that very, very shortly. At the same time, within the next few weeks, there are a number of releases. I don't quite know if we're going to, when we're going to take the time to discuss them, but I do know that in the next week, we do have the Academy Awards, or as I'm already calling, the coronation of Christopher Nolan. That'll be on next Sunday. And then we'll have a review of that, and let's see if they put on a good, or if it's a disaster as usual. And then at some point, we're going to make an effort for our top 10 movies of 23. I think I'm mostly ready to go. Although I literally point blank asked Kyle and Peter, both of which, as a matter of fact, insist we can't do it unless they're there. Didn't even respond. So that should tell you how soon you're going to get that. I would probably not expect that at least until April, maybe even the end of April, based on what I was able to gather from their lack of candor in their responses. I'm ready to go. I think most of us are ready to go. But I guess it is what it is. And before we get to any of that, as far as this show today, I wanted to very, 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 very quickly start off at the top by just quickly talking about two experiences that I had in the last week that I think are very much worth mentioning because I think they were very much um, iconic pieces of what film was in 23. So the first of which, now I want to make this crystal clear. I had a day basically to myself in San Diego, and so I saw in the listings or the show times that there was two films I had been interested in, and I took the opportunity, and I think they kind of got the best of each other, at least for me, the fact that I put them in the same day, because one particularly was a hard watch. And if you just leave with that in your mind and not having balanced out with anything else, it would have been a pretty bad day just because of the nature of the film. So the first of which is called The Zone of Interest. I'm just going to put it out there right now. I did think of another film that is actually harder to watch because you actually do see like violence. There's a documentary called 20 Days of Mariupol, which is I think the first or so 20 days when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Mariupol is one of those border cities, and they're literally dropping bombs and missiles and they're shooting civilians, and it's literally real life, and it's very hard to get through. I recommend people not watch that because it's an important story, but just like it's
rough.
It'll ruin your day watching that movie. As will probably The Zone of Interest, which is the film I'm talking about, that is directed by Jonathan Glazer. And this literally is a slice of life movie with these wealthy German family in 1940s. The only caveat being is, one, they're Nazis. The head of the family is the commandant for the Auschwitz concentration camp, and they literally live right next to the concentration camp. Like the wall is literally separates the concentration camp and their home. And you're literally there isn't much of a narrative. It's just them living their lives and trying to be good Nazis and whatever. The Aryan race, affluent lifestyle that Hitler promised them. They're just trying to like have a normal, affluent lifestyle. All the while, at every hour of the day and night, you hear horrifying sounds coming from the concentration camp, whether it be gunshots, screams, dogs, smoke, fire. It's like literally living next door to hell. Only these people don't care. So I was physically ill watching this. I'm not even exaggerating that. Like the sound design is beyond torturous. It gets to a point where you think you've had enough that you can take as far as like, the odd gunshot in the distance, but no, it just keeps coming along. It's like they're constantly reloading. Like the onslaught of human massacre that happened. You don't see any of it, by the way. You don't see one person get shot or killed in this movie. You hear it. Mm-hmm. That's the part that messes with you the most. The opening of this film is honestly really haunting because it opens with a pitch black screen, and then this choir of noises comes in and I mean like they're not singing anything pretty. They're singing something like it came out of hell. And like the camera is like going like this, and like the choir is amping up, and you hear like these horrible like screams, and then it turns red, and then it turns normal. This is like 3 full-on minutes, by the way. Like how this is just the beginning of
a horror movie.
It is though. It literally it sounds and looks that way, and then it slowly transitions to, you have the odd horrifying scream in the background, and then it's that transitioning to birds chirping, and then we get to where we're supposed to be. But that doesn't stop, because these characters are trying to have normal conversations. All the while, you hear a constant hum or machinery going on that's coming from the concentration camp. There's literally nighttime sequences where gassing is going on and the ovens are on and it's coming out of the chimneys, and unbelievably horrifying. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It is like,
Stuck with you,
but not in a good way though. I don't want to keep thinking about it, because it really is haunting in ways that even the best horror films can't quite get there, because this is reality. These are based on real people. These people actually lived. This particular main character was the commandant. He was hanged in the Nuremberg trials for his role in the concentration camp. I mean, this person, at the time of his execution, was very apologetic of what happened. He knew he was doing bad, which only highlights the behavior that you see in the film. But this entire movie, this guy is literally like, okay, how can we kill more of them? How can we gas more of them? How can we ship more of them here? And it's just like, there's even sequences where the family is trying on the clothing that they've stolen from the prisoners. Honestly, truly, some of the most disgusting stuff you'll ever see. So, is it a great film? Yes. Will I ever watch this again? I don't think I can take it. I don't think I can take it. There are some interesting choices the director does make with this along the way, because there's a moment in the end of the film where I'm going to talk about this because it's really interesting that some people have taken different takes on it. But there's one take that I kind of really liked was at the end of the film, one of the main characters is walking away from a party. He stops and then looks at us, not directly at the camera, but looking at the hallway. And then it's almost like he's looking through a hole in the space-time continuum, and then it cuts to present-day Auschwitz, and you see the people who work at the museum cleaning up all the different things and setting up what all the different things that they did. Then it cuts back to him, and then it just continues going on. It cuts back to the guy, and then he just walks away like nothing ever happened. I don't think that's a literal interpretation of what the director was intending. That there was he saw the future. No, but that's a really cool take on if you saw it from that perspective. The overall point of it is, and why this exists, is to remind us in a really, really fucked up way, reminds us how easy it is for people to be how these Nazis were, how okay they were with this extermination. Because we happen to live in times when there are atrocities happening every single day, and yet we're quite comfortable in our lives, aren't we? Some of us.
Yeah.
So it's a really unnerving experience. I don't know if you guys were interested in watching this. If you do watch this, I strongly recommend having something good vibesy prepared to watch immediately after this, because I couldn't take having that be in me the rest of the day, which is why I had in advance already paired it with something that I would watch immediately thereafter, which was it was a vibes film on the other end of the spectrum, that was really soul nourishing, which is kind of what you need after having seen that. But I don't know if that's a film that catches you guys' interest.
Yes.
For sure.
It is.
Okay.
but I am scared. I don't know why I've been having like issues with watching like emotional movies or whatever. Like maybe it's just me.
Maybe it's just the age.
Maybe.
I think there's a correlation between the older you get and then also the more emotional, I guess, movies make you. Also, I don't want to be that guy, but it was, I gotta say, I don't want to complain because on the whole, watching movies in San Diego is like, because you get the audiences that get what these are supposed to be and they enjoy them. Like, I want to paint you what a privilege I had on that day, because it wasn't just one. I had the privilege to see 2 international films in a theater with a full crowd of people.
Dang.
The first one, Zone of Interest, is obviously a German film, and the second one was a Japanese film, even though it was directed by a German director. It's a funny story. I get to that point, but still, it's like people showed up to those films and they enjoyed them for what they were in various different ways. Like both of which, by the way, were Oscar nominees. Like both films, Zone and Perfect Days, were Oscar nominees for international film. So you can tell that still has value for some people. Like if you have the distinction of having Oscar nominee next to you, that will drive people to the theaters to come watch your movie. So, because Zone of Interest was like completely sold out for the most part, except for like the first row.
Wow.
Yeah. One small caveat though, it did seem. Tell me if you feel like you're of this opinion that there are maybe some movies you don't bring snacks into.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you, it was a little distracting while watching the Nazi movie, hearing popcorn crunching all around me, and then I guess somebody opening up some Skittles, and it's just like.
I did that for Dune because I feel like for the most part it's like it's not quiet, but there's a lot of scenes where it's like really quiet. I was eating nachos.
Okay, but Dune's understandable because there's going to be a lot of loud moments. That's what you plan it out for, the loud moments.
But I didn't know what the loud moments were.
It was funny.
There was a part, I forgot which one, but I decided to start eating my nachos again, and I literally had to look around and be like chew like really slowly, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna stop.
We watched it today, and there was one moment where literally like no noise at all, like zero, and this guy starts to cough and everything. And I'm just kind of like, I was kind of laughing. I was like, damn, what a horrible moment.
No, that's also one of the privileges of watching a movie in San Diego, especially international films. At the times that I think I caught matinee showings and middle of the day showings of both of those films. When you're watching them with old people, you're gonna have the literally like just like that. If not a really loud cough, like or a choking cough or a sweater rustling around, like. Them old people can't shut the fuck up. Like they will make noise. At least
we had somebody today, like an old man, literally like turned his phone on, and it was bright, and he was like 2 rows in front of us, but it was like an old man. And then it was funny because right before, I don't know if they were talking about that they were in a movie theater, but I think they were. But right before the movie started, because he was with like 2 kids and then another person. I think they were like the grandpas or something, because they looked kind of older, but I could be wrong. But
the desert does age you.
Yeah, the other guy was making fun of the guy with the phone and said, "Well, last time we came, I think they said we came. I had to like you were gone for a good hour and a half. You started snoring." I was like, you better not fall asleep.
I mean, how can you with this one at least?
An hour and a half. That's literally the whole movie. Basically.
I've been in a lot of theaters, particular movies, and unfortunately, people have fallen asleep.
I
I
have
mean,
two.
I can name you like
Two
the last
times.
one. I know the last one was Poor Things. This random man, middle-aged man, I think, or 30s or 40s, but he looked older. He walks in with a carriage. There's a baby in it.
A baby.
No.
Interestingly enough, the baby didn't make a single sound.
Okay.
However, he did because he was like,
I would have lost my shit if somebody walked in with a stroller.
Especially on Poor Things. Like, of all the movies.
I swear to God, it happens in the most random films. These kind of situations. Who
That's
brings
so
a baby
funny.
to see Poor Things?
Yeah. All right.
Especially what made it awkward is, if you know the material in the movie,
Yeah. Uh-huh. At least it was in Saltburn.
Yeah. So that was the zone of interest. I also wanted to shout out the other film that I saw. By the way, guys, am I being able? Are you hearing me clearly? I know there's a lag, but are you hearing me clearly?
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay, great. Only because like the image is delayed on my end, but it's fine. So, Perfect Days is the latest film by Wim Wenders, and he is a very well-known director who I had not heard of up until I watched this film. So there you go. I love how that happens all the time. He is a German filmmaker, producer, playwright, author, and photographer. He has made films that are very notable, like Buena Vista, what's it called? Paris, Texas. And it's interesting to have a German director tackle on a Japanese film. You don't quite see that. But he collaborated with Koji Yakusho. That's the main actor in the film. And I think together they created something really special. This is the description from Letterboxd. The main character, Hariyama, which sounds like a Pokemon. I think David would know. There's like a Pokemon called Hariyama. So there's that. Hariyama seems utterly content with his simple life as a cleaner of toilets in Tokyo. Outside of his very structured everyday routine, he enjoys his passion for music and for books, and he loves trees and takes photos of them. A series of unexpected encounters gradually reveal more of his past. And that's the movie. I think what really makes this film special is that for a large swath of it, like they're really like extended parts of the film, largely because our main character doesn't really say much to a lot of the people he encounters. There are people he does interact with and but doesn't speak to, and there are some others he does directly speak with, but most of the film, the guy is basically giving a silent performance. And it's not a silent picture because there is a lot of sound. There's a soundtrack, there's the nature sounds, but like a lot of the film is kind of without dialogue. And yet, I was completely captivated by it. Almost reminded me of like when I watched the documentary "Won't You Be My Neighbor." There was a part where it was showing us clips of Mr. Rogers' TV show and how kids were just like glued to the screen, was just like watching like basic stuff happens, like just being captivated by it. And that's how I felt like watching this movie because you're just watching this guy go about his everyday life doing what to anybody else would be honestly kind of like things that are nothing to write home about. And yet there's so much beauty to be found in this simplicity. And it's I'm not going to say it's exactly the kind of film like a Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, where like they're about this like centralized, you know, really human character, and then they touch the lives of everyone they meet, and then they all have a happy ending. It's not like that. It's I think far more profound, and I think even more realistic than that. Um it's kind of a difficult film to explain because it's not, like you kind of gathered from the description, there's not much of a plot here. You're just kind of watching this man's life play out. But the more you see him, the more you know of him, and the more you want to know of him. And um, I think it's a really special movie. And I would encourage everyone to go see this because it's kind of already one of my favorite movies of the year. Like this really, really touched me. And there was a lot of things in the film that really spoke to me in various different ways. How this man was able to really find meaning in an occupation that most would gleefully like mock as a sign of failure, which is not how he treats it at all. The way that he cleaned those toilets, it was like him like literally painting the Sistine Chapel. Uh, it's beautiful stuff to see. Um, the fact that, you know, from an outside perspective, he lives a solitude, existence, and yet he's the furthest thing from lonely. You don't, just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely. The guy literally enjoys having so much time to himself. And it kind of made me remember what it was like, at least for me, when I would have to be him, basically, when I was living in a city where I didn't have anyone to do the things that I normally like to do. He also shares a love for a lot of analog stuff. He buys a lot of books. He has this vast cassette tape collection. He drives a car that only plays cassette tapes, and he only has cassette tapes from the 70s and the 80s. So it's that kind of soundtrack. It's a really beautiful movie. And I think it paired beautifully with Zone of Interest, because Zone of Interest is a film that very much made you just hate humanity, and yet Perfect Days reminded you of the beauty that really exists in humanity that most people just miss. It's in the everyday mundaneness that we find the stuff that keeps us going and that we really like the most. So to me, it really moved me. Again, I will say that I think for most people, when they watch a film like this, they would be like, okay, but nothing's really happening. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. There's so much happening. You just don't know it yet, basically, but so much has happened. And I was rewatching it over the week. Again, so much of it. I think the first 20 minutes, not a single line of dialogue, and I'm just like glued to the screen. So I recommend that film quite strongly. So there's that. Wanted to get that off the top. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this travesty of a presentation that we have here. Look, we're not going to mince any words here. Let's just get straight to the point. Last week, David and I seemingly had a lot to say just over the first episode of this live action remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender. All of those things stand, and at least from where I stand, they only got worse from there. Once again, to reiterate, live action remakes are useless, they're futile, and they always result in a far inferior story or version of the story. I think, to me, this particular show was yet another perfect example of like why you don't do these. And in even honestly ways that quite surprised me, because I think even in the best of circumstances, that was always going to be the case. However, I think what all of us continue to find the more we watched and the more we got into the season that this was, that this really ended up being a worst case scenario, in the sense that the people who were hired to do this show fundamentally did not understand what the show was, what it was saying, who these characters were, or why it was even popular in the first place. It's incredible to me how studios and executives continue to find people who are like wholly ill-equipped to maneuver or direct stories that are, when they're so clearly unable to understand what was in the text or in the subtext of the actual damn story. It is unbelievably impressive how it was every step of the way. They just kept missing the mark and missing the mark with it. And it's not just like barely missing the mark. Like in some instances, they weren't even close. Like how far away they were from hitting the target was a feat in and of itself. Truly, I think an impressive effort from the standpoint of stupidity. This was terrible. Granted, this was never going to be very good to begin with, at least for me. But this was terrible. And in a lot of different ways. I'll just say this right now. From a visual standpoint, I felt the show was quite bland. I already criticized how the costumes just look too clean and they just stick out. The dialogue is absolutely atrocious, as I expected it to be, but it still ended up being far worse than I thought it would be. I felt that the acting, for the most part, with some exceptions, but for the most part, was quite wooden and didn't quite hit the mark for me, to the point where I'm like, that didn't land. That it got to a point where it's like, wow, every single line is just like missing. It's just not getting anywhere near the point at all. The music was absolutely forgettable, except for the parts that they're just literally copying from the animated show.
Mm-hmm.
The action sequences were nothing at all to write home about, which is exactly one more reason why you don't translate from animation to live action. And then literally every single change that was made was just about the worst possible change you could make. Not that any of us feel they shouldn't have made any changes. Obviously, you do need to make them. It's the changes that they chose that indicates to us that these people fundamentally did not understand anything. So, also, it was fucking boring. So, that's my opening salvo. You guys continue.
Agreed. I am gonna be honest, I didn't even finish it because...
Why would you?
It took me... I watched the first full 3 episodes. I turned it off at the 4th episode.
Yeah. Me too.
It took me... Yeah, it took me a whole week to get it back...
Over a week.
Back started. Or get it started again. And I did the beginning of the 7th episode and
tapped out.
Yeah, I was excited when it first announced because
which was a long time ago, by the way.
Yeah, it was a while ago, because the creators were going to be a part of it, which, as we have seen before, that works.
Mm-hmm.
When they're a part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Invincible, The Last of Us, One Piece, Percy Jackson, all of those.
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
Had the original creators on it. They've been great. As soon as they lost them, Netflix should have pulled the plug. Sorry.
Yeah. They immediately left. Like, it was maybe not immediately, but it was pretty soon after it was announced. One of the things that they did say, or I remember them saying, was that they wanted to make it or appeal more to adults. I don't know what was the trigger for them leaving, but I can only imagine what it was after seeing this show. So yeah, I also was in that lane of like, I don't know, like I was very nervous about it. And then it came, and even like a few weeks before, which we did talk about, the interviews that were happening and the comments that they were making, it just did not sound good. The first episode, I couldn't take it. I thought that it looked pretty ugly on my part. I thought that the actors were good and they did the best with what they were given, which was not great. But I honestly could not get past the costumes when we were watching them. Like, they are so ugly. The costumes, the makeup. I, again, watched the 7th episode, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. The waterbending master.
Master Paku.
What the fuck was that? Like, I cannot believe that these got past everybody and made it onto what we were watching. They are so ugly. Like, I can't. Some people were making the comparison that the movie costumes looked way better, and I'm not saying that they were the best, but it was better than what we got here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The dialogue was cheesy, but not in a good way.
Oh man, I wouldn't call it cheesy, man. I'm gonna say right now. Well, maybe I could say it, but this is the worst kind of cheese.
Yeah,
let's put it in that category. I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Because I hate to be that guy, but literally every line that came out of Aang's mouth, I'm like rolling my eyes and just like, kid, you're not, you it's not working.
It didn't work for me. I know that, like, I think we've talked about it. I don't know. At least David and I have talked about it. But from what I saw, the only things that might have worked for me were Zuko and Iroh.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's the easiest thing
to get right.
Yeah.
To not just to get right, but like manipulate us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because
honestly, I'm gonna be completely honest. I cried.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 occasions with Zuko and Iroh. But again, we already have this like connection to them, which,
this is always the thing with these live action remakes. Is like, look, like when you're watching the scene, it's like, let me see if I can try to explain this, because when I'm watching it, the scenes that I think you're talking about, like for instance, to me, the part that got me the most moved of the whole show was when Iroh got on the ship as Zuko was about to go off because he was about to be banished. Zuko tells him, I don't need a babysitter. And Iroh is like on the verge of breaking down. How about a friend?
Yeah.
When I see that, when I saw that scene, the part that made me emotional,
actually 3 scenes,
even though the actors were good in that moment, what made me emotional was the history that I have with those characters. So even though I'm watching those live action actors deliver that scene, in my mind, I'm imagining the animated versions of those characters having that scene, which is why it hits.
This is another example, which I see the things that they added on, and this is like the thing that we said with The Little Mermaid. The things that were added on to expand the characters were good, because there were things that we had not seen before. So obviously that they're gonna work. One of the scenes that I thought was really good, and it made me emotional. I didn't cry, but it made me emotional because I was thinking about the animated ones. Was I believe it was in the first one when Sokka fought Zuko when he by himself, and then afterwards Aang tells Sokka, "You're the bravest person I know." That I thought was so good because again, I imagined the animated characters. I imagined that Aang really thought this of Sokka. It just was never said. And I imagined them saying it in the animated version. You know what I mean? So again, the things that were added on were good. Some were good. But there are things that they changed when it comes to the characters that we saw on the show that was like a mischaracterization to the characters.
It's such a massive diversion in like what these characters are that it kind of breaks them. Before we get to that, just to pile on a little bit more on the positivity here, every single scene that we got with Gyatso, I thought was brilliant. And I really also liked that reunion they had in the spirit world.
Ooh, I did not like it.
But I liked it in terms of like the actors, or at least him especially. And I'm not referring to what it meant
in the story.
No, because at that point I want to make it very clear. At that point I checked out. I wasn't even like paying attention anymore, because like honestly, by the time that I got like to episode 4, I mean this with all sincerity. By the time we got to episode 4 and 5, they were just they were on one with like everything that they were changing, everything that they were rearranging and putting together and taking apart. I'm like, no. What are you doing?
I will say though, I think that the way that they combined the episodes was interesting, and it was cool, and the way that I'm not saying that the execution was great, but the way that they kind of were figuring out how to combine all the episodes was cool.
Yeah, that's the thing that I want like people listening to like pay attention about, is that we like the additions, but execution wise you failed. Like it didn't stick the landing on anything that they tried to do. And so that is like our biggest complaint. I'll bring in some positives once we get to spoilers and all that. But like, yeah, that's the biggest thing. Is just like execution wise, you missed the mark on what you should have built up to in these moments, especially the additions. Like for me, the biggest ones are like the things they were trying to add of like the whole like the cost of war and everything. Like all those certain scenes, it should have like really been emotional by the end of it, but you didn't.
No, man. I feel like in theory and on paper, the changes and switcheroos that they made were interesting. That's it. In actuality, they were like, what the fuck is going on here? That's the degree to which like it got to.
And the thing I think about when watching any remake, any, especially these live action ones, is if somebody is watching them for the first time, are they actually getting what it is meant to say? Is the message coming through clearly? Are they going to get the same themes? Are they going to get the same things as the original? And that is what I think is missing in all of these. And that's why it gets people upset, because it's like, no.
It's trying to say something truly profound. but it's not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's too clumsy to say anything.
Yeah, and to like add on what Alice said before about how they kind of like condensed the episodes, I agree with that too. Like I agree that the way they condensed them, tried to like piece them together to like move to the next scene and all that. I think it was smart, like what they did. Like I'll give them that and all that. The only thing though is my favorite episodes were at 5 and 6, and those 2 episodes are technically 2-parters. Yeah. And why were those my favorite episodes? It's because they actually had time to flesh out everything they set up and execute it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's just the biggest problem with this show too. One of the biggest problems is that they just didn't have time to really like flesh out anything. And again, I will say this all the time. There's no fucking excuse for your episodes to just have 8 episodes on the show when this was a 22 episodes series. You know?
Yeah. And also another big complaint, which I think is what kind of destroyed this season. Why are you adding on things that are not supposed to happen yet? Why are you bringing in characters that are not supposed to be there yet? Because it takes away from this story, from this season, from this. The show is only 3 seasons. Like, you know, it's right now, that's kind of the longest thing that you're going to get in a Netflix show. Why are you not just focusing on what happens in that first season? Why are you trying to expand it more when you know you're going to get more seasons? Like,
yeah.
I think that is literally what broke me.
And again, you can expand on things. There's one particular moment that like I thought, oh, this was genius. Like what you guys put in here. I'll bring it up on spoilers, but like it can be possible. There's literally a comic of just like random stories that happen, random moments that happened in their adventures. Biggest one, and I don't mind spoiling this in the comics. Like there was a moment where the gang were in some marketplace and all that. This happens like in the first season. Like this is supposed to happen in the first season. The gang are in a marketplace. Aang sees like an airbending necklace, air nomad necklace, and he looks at it, but he's like, "Oh, this is like genuine, though. Like this is actually made from someone who would have been in the who would have been in the mountains and everything." And he asks the guy, like, "Where'd you get this?" He goes, "Oh, I just bought out some guy up in the mountains." And he goes, someone there? Like, could this be like a descendant? Could this be an actual airbender maybe? Like in hiding? Like, I don't know. And so he tells Katara and Sokka, names are always like stuck. He tells them, and they're kind of like, okay, like we can visit it, but just be careful. Like, I don't want you to get your hopes up. This could be also a trap. Like, we just never know and all that. And he thinks about that and he decides to go by himself because he doesn't want to like get them involved in case he does get disappointed or everything like that. He goes there and it was a trap. Zhao comes in and he goes, "I can't believe you actually fell for it. This was the same tactics that we used to capture your people 100 years ago." like you just fell for it again.
Yeah, that is something that they could have added.
They could have added this, and this could have been like really hit hard of the fact that like he's lost his people, and then afterwards, so like he gets out of it. He goes back
because they completely ignored it.
Yeah, for some reason. Yeah, so like he gets out of that whole situation. He goes back to Sokka and Katara, and he's just kind of like looking off into the distance because he's kind of like, "Fuck, like that was a disappointment." Katara goes up to him and she goes, "I know why you're sad." He's like, "Why?" It's because the mountains ran you home. I think your people would have loved this place. And he goes, "Yeah, they would have." And
stop. Like, literally gonna cry.
Like, that's a small moment that you could have added and you didn't. Also, honestly, biggest disappointment, Zhao as a character. No, they failed.
Again,
no offense to the actor.
They brought in other characters that are not supposed to be there, which took away from his character and what he does and what he represents.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was an epic fail. I mean, look, for me, there is a sea of epic fails all over the place in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But one of those has to be Zhao. That was honestly kind of embarrassing what they did with him. Like, I didn't like the whole him playing nice with Zuko at first, and then Azula came in here. Azula had no business being here. Honestly, the Fire Lord had no business being here. That whole prologue in the first episode had no business being here. That was absolutely useless and needless. And honestly, because of that, like all the Azula stuff, I fast forwarded through. I'm like, you know what? No, fuck you, show.
Me too.
I'm not doing that.
Me
Bye.
too.
Get the fuck out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entertaining this shit. And then, as you said, Alexis, they continued to sprinkle in things, particularly from book 2, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this situation? Like the whole Cave of Lovers situation, the song even being in there, like I'm like, that's the point where I'm like, you know what? I give up. At this point, I'm just gonna fast forward to the last 4 episodes because fuck you. That's to the level that I got to. Thank God, by the way, we did not do live reaction to these things. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, that would have.
I wanted to mention this in the last episode, but I completely forgot. But I told you afterwards, I was like, I'm really glad we didn't do reactions to this because I would have been like, we need to pause and we need to talk about this situation.
We need to stop.
Yeah. Like that would have been me doing our live reactions. Like, no. This, you have no idea what you just did here, my guy. That's for the writers. You have no idea what you just did. Oh my gosh. But I mean, just to get more into the spoilers part of it now, I mean, like I said, the best addition, I will compliment them on this, is the 41st crew. If you remember Alexis Soto. Basically,
Probably
no. Okay. Yeah, he's just kind of like 41st. So the moment where Zuko is like, oh, we can't do this to these people, you know, they're planning out their attack and they're going to say, oh, we're going to send a crew here and, you know, they're just going to be the trap, you know, take the bait. And that's when Zuko is like, no, you can't do that. You can't just like leave these people to die and all that. They're Fire Nation. They're our people and blah, blah, blah. And so after his fight with his dad, he's all bandaged up. And his dad exiles him. He says, if you care so much about the 41st crew, take them with you in your exile. And I was like, that's interesting because I never thought about like, oh, where did Zuko get these people? Like, does he switch off with people from time to time or something? Like, have they been with him this entire time? You know, it's a really interesting like question to ask. And so this is where we go with the dialogue is horrible. Literally, right after the Fire Lord says, take the 41st with you, it cuts to the present time, because this is a flashback, cuts to the present, and one of the crew members goes, 41st? We're the 41st. I was just like, I'm like, no, you didn't need to.
I don't know if this is a compliment or an insult to what I'm about to say, but moments like that really reminded me of Once Upon a Time. Because that was the structure of the show. It's like things that happened in the past, then we cut to the present. It's like, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just, and I got so mad about that dialogue too because I can't remember what Iro said afterwards. I think he's like, we're the 41st, and he saved every single man from being like from being killed and everything. It's like we already know this. We got the context from it. You could have said any other thing other than this than repeating what you just showed us. And I was like, why couldn't you just said like the 38th crew went there? And it's like, yeah, and those survivors. Like, just kind of show like that would have been just as fine too. Or you just could have like left them with the crew member being shocked. And then that was also the same moment where the Blue Spirit thing was happening. Zuko saved Aang from being trapped and everything. He comes back to the boat. And that's when the whole crew members, after they knew what he just did, they kind of like salute him and everything. It's like the princess returned, and this is like him walking past them, but they're all bowing to him and everything. Great addition. I love that he just like his kindness is what got him his respect for these crew members and all that. Mm-hmm. I think that's very like on point with the character and the actor playing Arrow. Best actor in the entire show. That's only because he has a great character to work with. When Zuko's walking away, there's like a single tear just rolling down from him. Again, great. That's awesome. Everything else, I'm sorry, you failed. Oh
yeah,
yes.
it was rough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot more to get into with the spoilers and like what we didn't like for like small things. The owl being in the spirit realm.
Oh, what the fuck was that?
That! Oh
what?
My god!
Literally no point of him being there.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that happened, David. Fuck you for reminding me of that situation. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
I hate. Oh, also, I think this is like,
Whoa.
or that arc.
Wait, Ellie, you're cutting off. You're cutting off. You're cutting off. Sorry, you're cutting off. Can you start over?
Am I good?
Yeah.
It's okay. Just... the Omashu arc literally destroyed me. The Cave of Two Lovers. Again, what the fuck was that? Like, and then having it be Katara and Sokka. I'm sorry. What? And then bringing in the Badger Mole. What the fuck was that?
I mean, I don't mind the Badger Mole. My biggest complaint in that scene, though, is that in the animated one, it was the crystals that guides him out of the cave and everything.
Because they turned off the lights.
Yeah. But I hated what they did with this one, where Katara figures out, I don't know how she figured it out, but she like puts her hand in front of the Badger Mole and goes, "They're blind, but they can sense our feelings." And I'm like, that's a big leap. How the fuck did you figure that out?
I didn't even see that. I skipped through that scene.
And mind you,
wow.
And mind you, it does make sense in the animated one, because that's the reason why they were able to like control the Badger Moles with their music and all that, and that happens in Legend of Korra, but the music is able to,
tunnel.
Yeah. And so like that does make sense in the whole world of it all. But like for her to realize
that, throw it out there.
Yeah, you can't just throw it out there. You use the music first, and then now you kind of go, "Oh, I wonder if they just kind of sense our feelings or something." And afterwards, it's like, but there was nothing like that before. It was weird.
And then Boomy.
Okay, well, yes, Boomy, biggest complaint for sure. But
wait, I'm sorry. Before we continue, there was something, because you guys already talked about that first episode, but there's something you guys didn't mention, and that pissed me off. I was watching it with two of my friends who, they don't care about the stuff. They don't care. Like, it is what it is to them. That's fine. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It just is what it is. Gran telling Aang about the Airbenders and him not having a reaction to it blew my mind in the worst possible way. Literally, their reaction was, "You're fucking joking." And again, they would never comment on anything like that. But that was insane that was something that was changed. And then Ozai coming in was like another thing that they were like, "Wait, what the fuck?" They literally said, like, word for word, "I was so excited for the Fire Lord to come out in that last season because he was the big bad. He was scary. And now he's here, and it's not the same."
Yeah.
But yeah, after that scene, because to me, I think like the moment where I was like, "Oh shit, like we're in it, like this is what the show is about," was when Aang found out about the Airbenders and he lost it. Like, that to me was the moment where I was like, I'm in. You have me 100%. And this is the third episode. And not that I wasn't in before, but that was like the moment where you're like, "Oh shit," you know? And the fact that they took that out and they did it the way that they did is insane.
There's no shortage of things, though, that are just like rub you completely the wrong way. The whole idea of him an element of the show that wasn't carried over was the idea that he didn't run away. He just happened to be caught in a storm because he was dicking around.
Yeah, but everyone treats him as if he ran away, as if
he
like the whole thing with Boomy.
Boomy. What the fuck? And like, we just watched that episode today, and I was telling David, like, this is like the guy, like, he's completely nuts. We all know this. He's nuts, but he's so wise. And like having that in one those two things in one character is so interesting, and it's so cool. And the fact that he does know Aang, and he knows him so well, and he tells him his strengths and how he's gonna handle this situation. You know, not just telling him, but like showing him how he's gonna use his strengths to overcome this. But like in this show, I literally had no idea what he was trying to do. But like in the animated one, you do get a clear idea. I mean, granted, he does tell you, but like you understand like what's going on. And in this show, they know each other. They know who they are, but you have no idea what Boomy is trying to say. And that's the thing that I think is missing from this show specifically is, you know, I think me and Alexis were saying off, not on air, I kept trying to go back to the show, but I just kept going back to the animated one. And the first episode that I started on was the one with the eclipse, when they're about to when the Fire Nation loses their bending. I love that episode so much because it's in the 3rd season, and it's a culmination of all of the things that they have gone through up until that moment, and they fail. And you see so much emotion in that episode. But like the biggest thing is all of the people that they've met, all of the lessons that they've learned, it shows in that episode. And in this show, you don't get any of that.
Also, I just remember too, in the live action one, Aang tells Boomy that like, no, I'm gonna like win through this whole thing with my friends and all that. In the animated one, Boomy literally tells him, you're gonna get through this with your friends. I just remember that. Like, he literally goes like, well, you cannot go through this.
Last time, even Momo has a big role to play.
Yeah, he literally says that too. Like, even Momo. That's just weird. Why would you do the complete opposite of it? You know?
Yeah.
It's
just to change something.
But I mean, like, to me though, that's so. Here's my biggest complaint. I know, like, I keep saying that big complaint, and all that, but like, the biggest complaint: absolutely no one treats Aang as a child. I hated that conversation with him and Kyoshi, where she was like, "You ran away from responsibilities and all that." I'm like,
what a bitch.
I mean, honestly, any adult that treats him like that, like, fuck you. I'm sorry, but like, he is a child. That was the biggest thing with Iroh, is that he understood that like he may not have like saw them as children, but he knew that they were their future. Like, he knew like he had to preserve whatever good is left within all of them, especially with Zuko, and hopefully that will go over when they're adults and it's like their time to like really change the world and all that. Like, that was his biggest thing. And I feel like you could have, and in terms of like when I mentioned before like about execution, there was this moment in the last episodes where Katara finally convinces Pakku to have the women join the fight and everything. So like, okay, fine, go to this section, you know, like just reinforce the walls, blah blah blah. Then some guy, a kid, probably her age, I don't know, goes up to her and he's like, "Hey, we were told to like follow your orders and all that." She goes, "Okay, sure." Like, you know, she's surprised by this, like she's in charge, basically, almost become a general, but he calls her like Master Katara and all that. Okay, moment. And so that guy, she tells him what to do. When they lose their bending, you see that same guy and the person who Yue, right? Was supposed to marry. they're in the front lines when they've lost their bending and they're facing the Fire Nation and all that. Once the battle is over, that dude and Yue's husband are dead. And like, again, they're trying to do this thing of this whole like price of war and all that, the cost of war and everything, that like it sucks, obviously. And you see Aang and Katara seeing those bodies and they're crying and all that. But I'm just kind of like, it doesn't work. This moment, I should be crying with them. I should feel bad about this whole thing. But you not once treated that. You literally told us this entire season, like, war sucks. We have to make all these bad decisions. And I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, this the same thing you've been doing this whole entire time. I don't like. Sorry, but I don't care about this moment. Had you focused on the fact that like these are just children, then that would have worked. Then that would have been something like, you see all these adults going like, fuck, this is the Avatar, a child, and you don't be an asshole to him. You just kind of go like, you gotta learn the elements. Just get out of here. Whatever bad thing happens, like just push him away. Don't have us see, or to have them see the like the cost of war in those moments. Just kind of tell us. This is one of those moments where telling is okay to do, because then at the end you show us what that cost is. Once we see like the big battles, the fear in their eyes of like, how are we going to stop this and all that. Then when you see that moment of Katara and Aang seeing those bodies, that's when we go, oh, like this is bigger than we thought. Like that's how you lead it up to it. And also would have worked better for Sokka's character arc, because when Yue dies, afterwards, Sokka goes up to her dad and he's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything about this and all that. And I like what he says, where he's like, his whole struggle is like, should he be a warrior? Should he be something else? Not even his dad believed that he can be like a good warrior and all that. And it was the chief of that place that says, in that moment, you were exactly what you needed to be with her. You were a friend. And so that could have been great, where it's like, maybe he still doesn't know what to do with his life, what to do in this moment. But right now, what he needs to do is be a friend, be a big brother to Katara and Aang when like they're at their lowest, and have him be like the brave warrior. And so, again, execution, you failed.
We haven't even talked about. Excuse me, I'm choking on myself. I don't know where I started talking, and like this is a Stam show. We haven't even gotten to the fact that they completely of the things that were removed from here, all the humor.
I mean, they tried to add humor, but
they tried, but they failed miserably.
Yeah,
they failed miserably. All the humor was taken out of it. Also, they took out Katara and Aang's love story.
Yeah, why?
I mean, again, for me, I don't mind it. I wouldn't have minded like a moment in the second season when he says, oh, I can't let go. When he's trying to learn the Avatar state, he goes, I can't let go of Katara. I love her. And then maybe he kind of had this realization of like, oh, wait, do I love her? Like, do I love her like that or something like that? So you could have done that. I think it would have been perfectly fine. But I mean, I understand why you guys don't like it.
I had a problem with what they were trying to do with well, first of all, Iroh being captured when Iroh is supposed to know Bumi. And then they're in the same Mashu. That obviously was just dumb. But then the things that those earthbenders say to him, and he seemingly doesn't care, that kind of was a problem for me.
Yeah. I feel like even though like some of the things that they did with him were good, like for the most part, it just didn't feel like him.
No.
Like,
yeah, I mentioned this one when with Zuko, when Zuko was talking to that one crew member and he called him like an idiot or something like that, and he's like, because he didn't tell him this piece of information that would have been helpful and all that. I literally went to LA and I was like, I feel like Ira would have told him to like, hey, better fucking cool it. Like you don't treat your crew members like this or something like that.
Yeah.
He
would have said something snarky.
Mm-hmm. For
but
sure.
Something that would have made Zuko realize, like, fine.
Yeah.
Fine. You're right.
Mm-hmm. I just like, I feel like if, again, Ira was the kind of character who like wants to preserve the goodness of Zuko, I feel like he would have checked him on anything that he does again. Does anything mean? So
yeah, it just it was just weird sometimes. Some of the things that they made him do, some of the things that they didn't make him do, it was weird.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm gonna keep watching the animated.
I know. I kind of want to rewatch it now, just to be like, dang.
It's doing a lot of good to wash out the taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention, Soto, you mentioned that you like the monkey Yatso stuff. That scene though, when he was in the spirit realm, I hated it. Because for one thing, the entire time I was like, is that actually him? And then by the time you realize that like it was him, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess he's gone.
That's true.
Oh, also another thing of them bringing unnecessary characters in. Why is it focusing on Kyoshi and not Roku? That also just like blows my mind. Because
she's cool.
I guess. But like it's just, I think I said this in a message, like they made so many, like it just feels like they made changes to make changes, not for the plot, not for anything. It just feels like they just said, yeah, this sounds cool, let's do it. Which is not okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like that they did it, but I understand why they did what they did with Kyoshi and all that, because she is technically people's favorite like avatar, not counting Aang, obviously.
But again, you can't go into this with, I mean, yes, you have to go into it with the fact of like people know this show, people love this show, but that can't just be all of it. Like you have to understand that it's like, okay, this is something new. This has to be something new for new people to come into this world. This, it can't just be fan service, because then it doesn't make sense.
For sure.
Is this on the same level, better or worse than Ahsoka?
Better.
I love the silence.
Better than Ahsoka.
It's hard.
I say better only because with Ahsoka,
they did nothing.
They did nothing. Yeah. I didn't understand a single thing that was happening with her character. I didn't recognize the character really, and it just, everything about it was pretty lame. And so that one wasn't even just, oh, your execution failed. Like, no, you didn't get us from the beginning. We didn't care about your execution. And we didn't really care about all the things that you added on, especially with the whole Ahsoka meeting Anakin. That was the biggest disappointment. At least for me. That was the biggest disappointment. With this, with Avatar,
at least we got a little bits and pieces.
We got bits and pieces of it. Again, I'll compliment the whole thing about the 41st crew. Zuko and Iroh in Uncle Iroh's son's funeral. That was a great moment between the two of them. Everything with Zuko and Iroh was absolutely great. Which, I mean, that shouldn't really be a big compliment though if they're not your main characters. So and I mean, yeah, Zuko and Iroh, really. that's the biggest compliment that I can give it over
Ahsoka. I think it's funny. I know I gave a lot of shit to Katara. I'm not a Katara hater, but she's just not my favorite. But the fact that they completely did nothing with her.
No, she sucked here. No, let's just be real. She sucked.
Bring back other Katara. I will love you forever, and I will never complain again.
It was bad.
But yeah,
I think they were both bad. I would say that it really is irrelevant to try and compare two pieces of shit. I think to me they both are just they end up being lifeless.
Mm-hmm.
Live action adaptations do not work. How many times does it have to be said?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got this Ahsoka and the Little Mermaid in the last in just a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People, I mean, I don't know if anyone is thinking this, but if you want to compare One Piece to The Last Airbender, One Piece is a manga, it's a comic, and also the animation from the beginning of the show does not hold up. So there's a lot of things they could have done differently. And the biggest compliment that I can give One Piece, though, is that it knew what story it wanted to tell from beginning to end. It knew what characters it wanted to bring in. There was nothing... I don't know. There wasn't really anything new to bring into those characters. What they got in those things were perfect enough. And so, yeah. That's the biggest thing. With Last Airbender, it felt like they were just focusing on the idea of the characters and not really getting the characters right. Again, when I say the idea of it, they're thinking Aang as like the wise monk. That is not who he is. He is a child, and no one ever treated him like a fucking child. And that was like that's my biggest complaint. End of the first episode. I'm the Avatar. No, he does not want to be the Avatar. That is the reason why he ran away. And again, the whole I'm the Avatar deal with it with Korra, that's just to differentiate the two. Zuko, as I give a lot of compliments to Zuko and Iroh, but with Iroh though, again, it's just the idea that he's just a wise man and all that. We all love him for it, but at the end, I think biggest thing they should have focused on is just that he is just the cool uncle, at the very least with the first season. So yeah.
Are we done?
I think so.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank God. All right. So let's get to some good stuff, guys. And again, with this, we're gonna begin with general impressions, and then we're gonna get into spoilers for this really big film that everyone's watching right now. Although I do think that for people who have been listening to us for a while, would be very, very unsurprised by what we would have to say. Especially since we kind of already tipped our hand at the beginning when we said that this would be a kind of a balanced show. We had the crap at the beginning and the great stuff at the end. So there's that. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. Just for a recap, we all really, really loved the first Dune Part One. I know that and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse have this thing in common where a lot of detractors like to attack those films as like, oh, but they're part ones. They're like half a movie. Those people, what's the nice way of saying go fuck yourself? I don't think there is a nice way. But I just think that particular idea is just, first of all, annoying, as if that somehow devalues the experiences that both of those films have to offer. But they both are able to be part ones, but they also have their concluding parts to it. Mm-hmm. Dune Part One was a really eye-opening experience. And I think, to me, the words that I recall using was that it was one of the first experiences that I ever had in a theater where I felt that the screen that I was watching it on was insufficient to what it was, really trying to show off with it. I think it appeared on all of our top 10s. It ended up winning at least 5 Oscars without being nominated for Best Director, mind you. It's funny how that happened. And the cast was perfect. There really was nothing left to say with that film. It was like, although what we did have to say was just the intrigue of like this world and these houses and all the political machinations that were going on in the film. It's great. We all loved it. So we obviously were very much excited for what we were going to get with part 2. It's kind of crazy to think that at one point we would have already gotten this film
I know.
in October if it wasn't for those strikes. I think in the long run it may have ended up working in its favor because before I even read this description, and I think some of you might agree with me, to any other movie coming out in 2024, good luck trying to top this. Good fucking luck with whatever you try to do. I don't even care. I haven't even seen the list of things that are going to come out this year. I don't even care. Good luck trying to come close to topping this. Just putting it out there. Anyway, this is, of course, directed by Denis Villeneuve, who is on a roll. Who has literally been on a roll.
No losses.
No misses. No misses. Like when I started watching, even though I did see Prisoners after the fact, but when I first started watching his movies, all in the theater, mind you, Arrival, Blade Runner, Dune Part 1, now Dune Part 2, just killing it. The letterbox description reads, "Long live the fighters." Follow the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he unites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the known universe, Paul endeavors to prevent a terrible future only he can foresee. Last week we had mentioned, David and I, that there were initial reactions that came out of the film and many people were using the word masterpiece. At no point, at least to me, was that a surprise. I just assumed going into it that this would be a great film because of how great the first one was and of the track record of this director. Like it was just one of those like, oh, I'm going to see a Rian Johnson film. It's going to be great. Oh, I'm going to see a James Gunn film. It's going to be great. Like no doubt in my mind that it would be great. What is always a surprise is finding out how it is great and what makes the experience worthwhile. There is going to be a lot that will be said about this film by all three of us combined. A lot of it I would suspect would be very much in common. But I would say, like, for me anyway, there were moments in this movie where I had literal chills on the back of my spine. There were moments where I was transcended, as I was in the first movie. In the first film, I was transcended in a way that I was completely transported to a different time and space and area. Here, it was on a far more spiritual level. You know, and I'm also conflicted in the ways that it made me feel, as you should be, because there's a lot that is in the text of this film that you are very much supposed to feel two different ways about it every step of the way.
Yeah.
And yet you can't help but get caught up in the mania. You can't help but get swept up in the grandiosity and honestly quite the biblical nature of what is transpiring on screen. Like, to me, this is the closest I have come to understanding on some level what it must have been like to exist in those quote unquote biblical times that so much of our culture has kind of been structured by and influenced by the Christianity religion and the Bible and all of those different things. Like, this is, to me, even more so than films like The Last Temptation of Christ or The Passion of the Christ. This was like this felt like I was literally transported to that moment in time, and I could see for myself all of these things that were happening. And it was invigorating, it was exciting, and then also terrifying to witness all the same. So when certain things happened, it made me feel excited yet terrified, and that is an interesting combination that I'm not quite used to. But I nevertheless was blown away constantly by the film on various different levels, whether it be the visuals, whether it be the sound, the score, the writing, and the acting, of course. 10 out of 10, no notes. I gotta say, like, I and all of us here have seen it at least 2 times. Saw it yesterday, saw it today, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say. The thing happens, it ends, and it was, I think, to all of us, what we all feel the best of films make us feel like we have had some kind of a, in this case, it's actually a bit on the nose, but trying to take a step back, all films, the best of films, walking out of it, it makes you feel like you have gone through a religious experience. This was absolutely sensational, and this was a moment. The things that were captured on film and that we were shown on those screens were absolutely beyond our wildest imaginations. This is the purest sense of what the medium is supposed to be on a visual level. It will thrill you in ways that I don't even think people like us who saw Dune Part 1 are even prepared for. Dune Part 1 was, larger than life, and yet it was blown out of the water by Dune Part 2. It doesn't even compare the scale that you see here. And it is also downright impressive in just this second part, how much of the story it's going through, how many different places and faces that we see throughout the story that come in and out of the movie. And yet it doesn't feel like it's a film that's almost 3 hours long. And I say the same thing as I felt walking out of Dune Part 1. If that had been an hour longer, 2 hours longer, would I have cared? No, not at all. Please keep me here all day if you have to, because this was sublime. There's more I want to say. There's more I will say, but just that's the initial reaction I felt.
I feel like I knew what I was getting myself into, but I did not know. And immediately after the movie was over, I think I told David, we need to come back, like, now. I was so jealous of the people that were watching it at 3 a.m. If I could have, that would have been me. It's so good. I feel like after we got out, like we went on separate cars, I literally could not think of any other thing the next day. We saw it Thursday night. On Friday at work, I couldn't think of a single thing. I didn't even do my work because I was just thinking about this movie. It's so good. And it's like it's a movie that you just have to think about, because you, like, if once you start thinking of one thing, you're like, oh shit, okay, and then you start thinking of the next thing and you're like, oh fuck, okay, like, and I love that so much, and it's so good. I don't know, everything that you said times 1,000, it's so good.
One of the things that I think caught my attention, in one of the ways that you categorized this movie among other titans in our canon, and I mean our canon of films that we love. You put this up with, like, I think to you have described in real time and in years since, that some of the most invigorating and memorable cinematic moments for you have been Last Jedi and the Batman. and you compare Dune Part Two to those, like not in the sense that they're like them, but what Dune Part Two did for you is how similarly how Last Jedi and Batman made you feel like. Basically, it can be described as it reminded you movies are great,
Mm.
Yes.
and how great they
Yeah.
can be, and how amazing they can make you feel.
Yeah.
Hmm.
100%.
David, I'm sorry.
love
No,
this movie.
continue.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, pretty much everything you guys said too. I am absolutely loving this world because it is so fucking interesting. There's so much to it. I for this movie, I just love the story, the build up to seeing the Messiah of this, and also just really find Paul an interesting character. He is someone who literally has like power, like right there, and is so afraid to use it. And then when he finally gains it, it's actually like a tragedy of sorts because you don't know what's gonna happen
he's
next.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then,
I heard I was watching a video and somebody was like they had just finished reading Dune again, and they were like, I can't stand this book. And then in the comments, everybody was like, oh, it's because Paul sucks. Paul is like the worst character, and not in like a character wise, as in like personality.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, and then again, like being in this world at this moment, like with reading the book and stuff, I'm 100% in it right now, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, just to talk about all the technical stuff of it, beautiful looking movie. We saw it in IMAX today, 70 millimeter. It looked fantastic.
Oh my god. Oh,
dude, it really was like the best, especially with
I'm about to like drive over to Tucson and see it with you guys, because we tried organizing something on our end, and then with the personalities involved, you just know it just wasn't going to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
So I just gotta like dump their asses and come see it with you guys. 70 millimeter. God damn.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what. This isn't my favorite shot and all that, but I just like this is the most standout. But it was like the first time they were going to attack one of the bad guys, crawly thingies, and
The Harkonnens?
the Harkonnens like crawly factory machine and all
The
that.
machines.
Yeah, and just like the wide shot of it, the greenness of the film and all that, like it just looked gorgeous. Oh my god!
I think we would agree. At least I hope we would. I think Dune Part 2 joins Avatar: The Way of Water and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in being an elite caliber of the best visually looking movies ever made.
For sure. And it's just, but also like it really like took advantage of like they're just in other worlds. They're just in a different universe of sorts, and they really try to play with that, and I love it. Please do that more with any other movie.
No, absolutely, of course, need to do more of that. There are no shortage of ways to really describe to you how this film was unbelievable. But to just buttress that a little bit, do we have any kind of critique? Anything that we can just say that didn't work for us on any level, just to start off with that? Because I suspect if there are any, well, I'd be surprised if there are any. I don't think I have anything to say that I thought that I would say it didn't quite work for me.
I mean,
I guess like the only thing is I have heard some of the differences in the books. I haven't gotten that far yet, so I don't know a lot of them. But people are kind of like about some of the changes, which again I won't know until I get there on the book. So once I get there, maybe I will have some
Interesting to say Peter was not one of those people, though. He was not one of them that was like there were iffy changes. He actually liked all of the changes that were made.
Yeah,
that's good.
For the ones that I've heard, I do like what they changed. I think the biggest one might be Zendaya's character,
Chani.
But I, at least from what I've heard, have not read it. From what I've heard that the changes are, I like this a lot better. But we will see. But aside from that, no notes.
No
notes.
It's not so much a complaint, but I do feel the length of this movie. I don't know what they could have done differently. They just kind of maybe edited down some things. It's just mostly like right in the middle part of it, like the beginning. Everything about Johnny and Paul's relationship, like absolutely great. I think the moment is right when Austin Butler's character comes in that I'm kind of like feeling the length of it. I'm not complaining about his character or anything like that. It's just like I'm kind of like, oh right, we have like other things to worry about.
I wanted more.
Yeah, I wanted more, man. It could have been it could have been 3 hours and 45 minutes, and I'm like, who cares?
Yeah,
honestly, that's interesting. You did feel the length. To me, especially the second time, flew by.
Me too.
It flew by completely. Didn't even like, oh shit, 3 hours already passed by. It's like, damn. But that's I think that's how good of a film it was. On that note, if there's one thing that perhaps now this comes to nitpicks, I already mentioned it. Where yeah, I would have preferred a lot. I would have preferred an hour more because I think there are a lot of players in this story that do great with the screen time that they're given, but I mean, I would have loved to have had more Austin Butler, more Florence Pugh, more Christopher Walken, like even more Charlotte Rampling, the Reverend Mother that's next to the Emperor. It's like all that other stuff. It's like, look, and it's extra stuff. Like I think everything that we got in the film was what we needed. We got it, and it was enough. Great, but what I mean is those characters were so interesting.
Yeah,
I can only help but want more of them. Which is a good thing.
will say I was pretty upset with what happens with Austin Butler's character. But that's just like a preference. I don't even think that's like a complaint. I wish.
Actually, I do. Yeah. More of Dave Bautista. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with him. I don't know. Make him more formidable against Paul. Really build up.
He did get sidelined here.
Yeah, he did.
Sidelined hard. That being said, though, I find Butler far more interesting. He's just far more, I think, intoxicating and invigorating. The
psychotic, if you will.
Yes, but I mean, look, Bautista was great, but I think it became pretty clear. He was meant to play second or third fiddle, and he just wasn't up for this. They made it clear several times in this movie, especially. He's kind of a bitch. Like he ran away like a scaredy cat. While the rest of his like even though he was like murdering like his staff the entire way through, when it came to his life in danger, he kept running away. Like, did you notice? By the way, this is actually, I will give him credit. I thought this was funny. Now, this is at the point, ladies and gents, and everybody in between, that we're gonna start giving things away here. If you haven't seen it, and you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing? Get off your ass and go see this right now, because it demands to be seen. Now, what I was saying, one of the things I will give Rabon, Dave Bautista's character credit for, is he was the only one in that, like, in the Emperor's court, when the third act was going down and like hell was being unleashed in every direction, he was the only one that had sense enough to just walk out. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
He walked away and he was fine. And he almost made it off world. Like, and he would have lived if he wasn't dumb enough to be goaded into by Josh Brolin. But still, it's like, I thought it was funny how literal hell was falling from the sky and he walked away. And like, if he walked away, they could have walked away just fine. And they just chose to stay there like sitting ducks.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny to me. But anyway, the point there is he kept running away. He was a bitch. Even Austin Butler made him this bitch when he made him kiss his boot, literally. It's like, I mean, to me, it's like, and it also kind of wrapped around where he ended up getting his justice with Josh Brolin's character, who I actually really enjoyed a lot more in this movie than in the first one. I think he was great in the first film, but I actually love how they brought him back in, and he was actually kind of key to the events that will be unfolding with Paul, especially with the arsenal that he That when that came to mind, I'm like, oh, you got nukes. That's pretty big. Like it did make me think though, and again, I want to stress, I am not one of these people ever that's like plot hole, plot hole, plot hole, plot hole. But it did make me think, you had this the whole time when the Harkonnens were like literally blowing you to hell the first film. Now I will say it makes sense. It did not seem like that was something they could activate remotely, especially when I believe Leto was incapacitated and then Paul was running away, and they were the only two who had access to that. So
yeah,
within the logic of how this was presented to us, it makes perfect sense that wasn't an option. But if it were, that was kind of like, it kind of reminds me of those fucking drones that Tony Stark had in Far From Home, but conveniently didn't have in Endgame. So again, just stuff that happens that I want to point out to you. But my overall thing is again, just in picking in places to start off. Let's just go with Austin Butler, right? And then we can start off with the small pieces and then work our way to the larger themes. Look, I thought he was incredible as Elvis Presley. Like he commanded the screen, and that was a transformative performance to, I think, a fault. Unfortunately, I think I feel bad the way people have treated him and made fun of him.
They're so mean.
Or I guess the voice and everything, and he really had to like work out of talking like that.
Yeah,
I mean he basically blaming him.
What, 3 years?
Yeah, but still, it's like people were like making fun of him for being too good at his job. That's a trip for me. But still, guys, I think the same can be said of others in this film, but like if it wasn't already made clear in Elvis, I think we just saw one of those moments where we see a movie star being born before our eyes. And you can say that about any number of actors in this film, but I noticed this more, especially the second time around. Fucking Austin Butler is incredible.
Yeah.
The command.
His little like
nods, the stares that he gives to everyone. Like I noticed it.
Everything. Like he commands the screen, and I'm just like, the power that you're able to hold there. It's like you're, and by the way, he's acting off against Stellan Skarsgård, and more than holding his own, on the screen. Like he also shares the screen with freaking Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh. And then especially at the end with Timothée Chalamet. And he stands out like every step of the way.
For sure.
Like, wow. And again, he's not alone in giving us like a wow performance, but like especially how he was introduced. That whole sequence, by the way, was just like, again, what movie am I watching when that happens? You're just like, did we just cross over into a different theater? Did we just like get transported to a different film? Like, but
I absolutely love everything with the Harkonnens, like their planet and stuff. That was the part where I got chills. I was like, this is amazing. I love this so much.
How did they film that?
Oh my god.
And black and white.
For sure.
I love it so much.
And I don't know why I just love this detail, but the fireworks in that, how they made it look like ink blots. That is such a cool detail. I love it.
So many small details. Even in the Coliseum, when Austin Butler is like fighting all those Atreides, I don't know what they would be called, but the Wranglers.
They have a black sun. Yes, they look so cool.
Yeah,
they were creepy too. Like for a minute, I'm like, they kind of remind me of the Xenomorph from the Alien movies.
Yeah,
like. And
I loved it though too, because like I didn't see them at first. It wasn't until like the camera panned, they took a step to in the opposite direction, and I was like, "The fuck is that?" Like it freaked me out. And then just you get closer looks at them, and it's just like a regular costume, but you're still kind of like, "What are you? Like, what's underneath there?" Like that.
They're a creepy.
There's
species.
No way you're human under there.
No, that I mean, all kinds of creepy, all kinds of weird, and yet. It works. At no point are you taken out like, this isn't doing it. No. This is like, You're committing to it 100%, and you're getting to see what happens when you do that, especially with this. But then also when you have a skilled auteur behind the camera who, and look, I I have never been of the mind that you absolutely have to be a lover of the source material for you to be able to make a great adaptation of it. I think people who subscribe to that idea, in my view, are very misguided and foolhardy to believe so. That being said, it can very much make a difference. And I have called Denis Villeneuve the Dune Whisperer because with the first part and then the second part, it just seems to be that he's the only one that's been able to really transcribe the text and create images and sound that are coherent and absolutely are cinematic.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it does make a difference though, because what we were talking about earlier, they clearly just didn't want to understand, and then this one,
go
ahead. In this one, again, the source material is tricky. Like, I'm not saying it's easy to understand and it's not for everybody, but the fact that we are getting what we're getting on screen from what the source material is amazing.
No, I mean, it's just like the thing that with when it comes to like source material, there's a difference between you making something as a fan of it and you making something as a filmmaker. And I think Villeneuve really focused on his filmmaking side of it, especially when he has like such great people working at his side, where like they know like how to execute his idea of like these certain things, certain worlds, and all that. Whereas with the Last Airbender, though, you don't you don't need to be a fan. Like, I feel like you can watch the show, read the comics, read the books and all that, and like just understand how this world works. And you really don't, again, you don't have to be a fan. The whole thing I said on the last episode about this whole bending is a state of mind, like I didn't just think of that because like I love this show so much. It's like, no, it's like this whole thing makes sense. I'm just paying attention to the dialogue. Earth is a stubborn element. You have to be just as stubborn in order to move it and all that, and so like that's something Toph says to Aang, and just from that idea you can get as to why he was struggling so much earthbending and all that. And so you just kind of have to pay attention to the source material. You don't have to be a fan of it. And well, I know it's kind of hard argument to stand on because Villeneuve's with Dune and everything and The Last Airbender, like big difference and all that. But I mean, there's also the other things of we mentioned in terms of adaptations, like The Last of Us, Invincible. Like it has the original creators of it, so obviously you're gonna understand the source material and all that. They just need good people who know how to make a movie or a show on by their side. So
yes. I forgot what we were talking about before this.
We were just talking about Harkonnen planet and all that. I think we said everything we wanted to say about that planet. So
no, it was an amazing sequence. I'd also, before we leave off that sequence, I don't want to forget. Again, we didn't talk about it, but in recent weeks, the Academy announced that they're going to be doing a new award for best casting. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the next year. So, but this absolutely would be deserving of a casting award, because everyone here, like again, larger or smaller roles, they do so much with their screen time. Like Lea Seydoux, she was the Bene Gesserit that basically sleeps with Austin Butler. And if you don't know Lea Seydoux, she's most known for her work on the James Bond movies, Spectre and No Time to Die, especially. She plays James Bond's girlfriend. That actually has a baby with him. So there's that. let's talk about again, starting off with the smaller pieces, the Emperor and Florence Pugh, and then the Bene Gesserit. Because I think what's really interesting is, cannot believe these houses put their trust in these witches. And hey, I'm not blaming the witches.
This is like a thing that I was gonna bring up, and I wanted Peter to be here because I don't quite understand it. I mean, I guess we can talk about it later though. But it does have to do with the witches. Like how I guess that's just like me being a chismosa. So like I just want to know how they got into power and why everybody's so like everybody relies on them.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they basically control. They control everything. I mean, the Emperor basically made these decisions based on the Reverend Mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own designs, and they've not been opposed. They've not been stopped. They're the reason why all of the events that have happened in this story, like they're basically Palpatine.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
And then Florence and Christopher Walken were also really good. It was interesting to see Christopher Walken be the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny sometimes because I couldn't take away the fact that it was Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And then watching it with Kyle, of course, he has to make a big deal of it. Like, literally, I think when they were on Arrakis, the Emperor said, "Baron," and then Kyle was laughing. Like that's all it took. That's all it fucking took.
Yeah. No, I mean I understand why Kyle would be that way for sure, but he did still give a good performance though. Like I really liked it. They could have, I don't know. I think they could have easily been like bringing out the Christopher Walken part of it or something like that. But like no, he played someone who like you kind of do have to be afraid of in a sense, you know.
Yeah. Also, well, with Florence Pugh, I'm so excited to see what they do. In the book, she comes out. She basically is like at the start of every chapter,
like a narrator almost, right?
Yeah, the start of every chapter is her kind of describing the events, but in like
and this movie
like
begins
a diary.
Like that.
Yeah, So actually, like when we started reading it, I told David, I'm like, she comes out in like the entire book. Like we didn't see her right in the first movie, and she got casted after.
But we have seen Florence and Timmy in another movie before.
Yes.
Little Women.
So I'm so excited to see what they do with her, and I'm so excited to get to her. I guess where like actual events with her happen in the book.
Yeah, she doesn't get much to do here, but what she
does get, it's amazing.
She is somebody who just commands attention in anything and everything she does. Like, and also she picks really interesting roles every time.
That I was gonna bring that up. I don't know if you guys saw. You probably did. But for Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan literally was like, if you don't want to do it, it's okay. It's a really short role. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, that's all I have. Like this and that. And she was like, dude, no, chill. It's fine. I want to do this. And then the same thing happened with this movie.
Yeah.
He went up to her and was like, you need to work with me. You have a really small role in this one, but I promise you'll be central in the next one. But you have to trust me and this and that. And again, she's like, no, it's fine. Like, I want to do this. I love her.
Don't forget, in between Oppenheimer and Dune Part 2, she was in The Boy and the Heron.
Yeah.
And she had a great role there too. So she's just picking like really great parts. And again, she's not the only one in this film that's done that. I think, to me, when you begin to separate the trajectory of the careers like Timothée Chalamet and Florence Pugh from the Tom Hollands of the world, where they make literally every wrong decision imaginable, but then you see Timmy and you see Florence just like really going out of their way to make really careful but smart decisions on like what movies and what projects they're attaching themselves to. And Zendaya is also one of those people who just like project after project, it's just like it becomes banger after banger. And we'll get to Timmy and Zendaya in a bit. But Florence Pugh, I imagine, and will have a far more substantial role when we get to Dune Messiah.
Yeah.
In a few years from now, for sure. I will say, I had no idea she was also Bene Gesserit. Like, geez, man, these witches. I gotta say, you gotta admire just the patience it took from these witches to just plan out. I do wonder though, because if there's something that the films haven't explicitly explained to the best of their ability, what is the end game?
Yeah.
What was it that these witches wanted to achieve? Like, I know that Lady Jessica, Paul's mom, before the events of this film and during the events of the movie, mind you, of course, that she kind of goes through a bit of a transformation, but no matter what, she is of the idea that giving this prophecy and this story to particularly the Fremen was a good thing because it gave them hope in an existence that everyone else saw as fruitless and absolutely meaningless. That's the perspective of Jessica and then seemingly the whole of the Bene Gesserit. Still, as is mentioned throughout the entirety of both movies, they have different prospects. They have different potential, I guess, candidates. And it's all dependent on who they could and couldn't control, which is why you see in the middle of the movie, Léa Seydoux is sent to test whether or not Austin Butler could be controlled in the same way that we saw Paul be tested in the first film. And in both instances, if they couldn't be controlled, they would have been executed on the spot. I would just say, though, I found it quite humorous that the Reverend Mother, played by Charlotte Rampling, thought it was irrelevant whether or not the Butler was psychotic.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Because it really reminded me of, well, because we lived through this, right? Like we in our own existence, but I mean, we laugh at it, but it's the truth. It's like the Republican Party thought that they could control Donald Trump, and then they almost were killed. They almost were assassinated by an insurrection that he led, and then they were like, and then when they begged him to call off the dogs, they were like, it took him forever to respond. And then they were like, he doesn't care about us. No shit, he doesn't care about you. Like, we lived through that. That happened in our own reality. And people wonder why the Republican leader stepped down and now announced his retirement just this week. He's not doing that again. That's why it's like you can't control the unhinged. I don't know how obvious it needs to be made, but like clearly Austin Butler was not somebody you would ever control or delude yourself into thinking you could control. So I'm just like, wow, lady, that's a big miscalculation on your part if you think that's irrelevant.
She was losing her touch.
Yeah, but I mean, the whole story is really just interesting when you think about. We don't quite know what it is, the end game of these witches, but we know what they did, and we know that the impact that it had, and it really is what makes this story such a tragedy, because for as much as Paul wants to avoid the, owning of the mantle of the Messiah, and he wants to avoid this prophecy because he knows that this was made up. Like, there are no, like, religious. I mean, there are no like gods or all this like, you know, what are they praying to exactly here? Because this was made up.
Yeah.
This was planted in by these witches for designs that haven't been revealed yet. He doesn't want to go down that path, and yet it just so happens that he needs to go down that path, which is why he doesn't want to, but he needs to get the thing that he wants most. And it's not just vengeance, although that plays a big part in this as well, but it also, down the path of vengeance and down the path of religious fundamentalism, is also the freedom of the Fremen and the claiming of them finally having their planet back and owned by them. So it's like, it's one of these things where all of it is intertwined and it's unavoidable. That's the thing. It's like, he tries to convince himself the entire way through that there is an agency that he has, that he does have a choice, and yet everyone around him is just working against that idea, and he never really had a choice. And it doesn't. You look at his own mom, but then that's why Josh Brolin, Gurney, comes back into the picture, and he tells him, "Look, I don't have to be a prophet to see where this is going to go, and you already know where this is going to go. You can't avoid this, David."
And what's so funny though is like all the prophecies and stuff, like it's all just a lie, it's all just made up, but it's still coming true.
That's what's creepy, right?
It's
the
so
way
creepy.
that it comes true is so creepy.
Yeah, but like literally everything to do with Paul, like it all comes true. Like, you know what they say, like he will learn your ways he knows of your ways as if he's like lived it before and all that. When they first saw him in the suit thing, and he just like had it on perfectly, and they're kind of like, oh, okay.
Well, David, go back to the first film. Go back, I think it was to the beginning and the middle of the movie. Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, who, by the way,
so
we come on, like that's an actor that I don't think has gotten enough.
Yeah, and that was like a thing that I was not expecting, that this movie was funny.
Yeah. He was funny, but also just kind of terrifying because of what he represents too.
Yeah.
But remember, Stilgar said in the first film, in the first ever meeting he had with the Atreides, he goes to their residency. Remember, this is the scene with Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, and then Timmy is in that scene as well. Before he leaves, he faces toward Paul, and he mumbles under his breath, "I recognize you." Then he walks away. So from the very first interaction he has with Paul, there is something that makes him wonder. And then here, literally, he's putting him through all the tests to see if the signs emerge. One after another, it begins to feel like it's overwhelming. Like, if you're a fundamentalist like he is, and you were raised to believe and watch out for these signs, when you see them, it's exactly what I think that one woman, that one helper lady that was supposed to be a maid in the first movie said, when you've lived with prophecy for so long, but then, and when you actually see it, like it moves you.
Yeah.
And all of the ways that it's moving him is just like, you can't help but also be caught up in it. It's like, holy shit. Like we have the benefit of knowing this was planted in here.
Yeah.
And yet, fuck, the way that it's coming true, it's like, what the fuck is going on here? And to me, the one that really gave me chills was, this is the scene where Paul is riding the sandworm.
Yeah.
Which, what a scene, right? But it cuts, so it goes from Stilgar saying, "as written," it cuts to Paul on the sandworm, and then it cuts to the actual fucking hieroglyphic image in the siege of the chosen one, basically on that sandworm.
Yeah.
And then we have,
not only that, but like that little detail of like, he wrote the biggest sandworm that they've ever seen. And it's like, that is
and that
not
wasn't
just
planned.
Yeah. Like, there was no way. They even joke too. It's like don't write a little one and all that. It's like, but then he just happens to meet the biggest one ever, and it's like, what the fuck? How? And actually, I do want to point out this is something from the books though. Everything Paul did was coming true in the prophecies, but when it came to Jessica, she was just kind of like bullshitting throughout the way. So like, there's one detail in the first movie where that one maid like shows her the blade or the knife, whatever, and she tells her like, "Do you know what this is?" And Jessica goes, "It's a maker." And she was going to say something else, but the maid like stopped her, and she said, "Yes, it's a maker of," and then she like says something, I don't know what it was. In the book, Jessica was going to say a maker of death, but the maid says something completely different. And so like that shows you like, for Jessica, she is fumbling it, like the prophecy. Like she really isn't the, what was it? Like
The Reverend Mother.
She wasn't going according to plan.
Yeah.
And she really wasn't. Like the whole, and that was, I mean, can we get into Lady Jessica's character?
Let's get into that, because let's just be clear here. That's not what she was there to do. They were there for the whole point of them being there was to not die, first of all. And what happened thereafter? Look, I wanted to start off with saying this. Who here has seen Dr. Sleep?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know.
I was surprised with her acting.
Well, hold on a minute here. I know her from there, and I've also known her from the Mission Impossible films, particularly Fallout and Dead Reckoning Part 1. And then, of course, Dune. People have been sleeping on Rebecca. People have been sleeping on her because she has delivered a consistently amazing performance in all of these very different franchises, mind you. She's, to me, honestly, one of my favorite actors. That anytime she pops up, I'm like, she holds me on every word. Like, she's that good. And the performance she gives here was not at all what I was expecting.
No.
What?
Especially coming from the first one.
Yes, it very was different.
A complete, like, 180 the whole time with her. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I didn't, like, I think by the end, I was like, does she actually believe it? Like,
I mean,
is she like crazy enough to, is she crazy enough to, like, believe what she's saying? Like, I don't know. But I loved her. I loved every time she came on screen, I was like, ooh, like, what's going on? What's happening? Yeah. And her and Paul's interactions were so good. I wish that they would have gotten more screen time together. I wish that they would do more interviews together.
Yeah, right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Unless
cool.
Timothy was the co-star that yelled at her. I'm kidding. No, that would be
horrible.
That would be horrible. Dude, where do you even start with what they did with her in this movie?
I know.
I guess the place to start
the first 10 minutes, she's cracking somebody's skull, pregnant.
Just to start
and
off.
And not only that, like, immediately after goes, what did I tell you about, like, scolding her son?
The thing is this is the tragedy of this story, is that yes, the movie ends and Paul Atreides and Lady Jessica are alive, but I think pretty clearly throughout the course of the film they kind of lose themselves. To be fair though, they don't seem to have a choice in the matter though, on any, even though yes, the Bene Gesserit like laid out these plans, everything that happens to them that helps in losing who they are, kind of out of their hands. Like she even says like, hey, I don't really want to be the Reverend Mother. first of all, I don't even want to be here. I want to get the fuck out of here, get off world, get somewhere safe. But either I'm the Reverend Mother or they're gonna fucking kill me. So what choice is that?
Yeah.
And then what's the very first thing they do? They give her fucking poison. They give her fucking poison to see. The reason why they do that is because Stilgar is like, well, this is the first sign if she survives, because of the whole, Lisan Agagi, yeah, the whole situation. But it adds another element that she's with child, and the old Reverend Mother says, "What have we done?" And it's never quite explained what she means by that. What have we done? And we still don't quite know, unless you guys want to share with me, because to me, an element of this story that isn't quite yet explained, who the fuck are these voices? What mechanizations are at play with the spice and the voices with the water of life, and what that does to both Jessica and Paul? Because as far as I can tell, made them fucking crazy.
Well, from what I understood was, they can talk to each other like through their minds, or telepathically, whatever. So the voices are, from what I understand, it's the sister, because in Jessica drinking the water, it opened up her mind, and so into the baby as well.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that all three of them are witches also. Which comes to like the question that I wanted to ask Peter was like, do the other witches not like Jessica? Because
they're mad at her. Remember that because you had mentioned
her having a son.
Yeah,
she was not supposed to have a male.
So after that, they were like, "No, you're dead." Basically.
Yeah, basically.
In a way, I mean, they didn't quite like banish her, but in a in a silent way that she was kind of dead to them, because I mean, they basically were like, "You're jumping the gun on us here. Like we were not ready for this part yet. That was supposed to be the next generation. You took it upon yourself because you thought that you could have the one that we were waiting for." So she came across as self-opportunist to do that, and so it came too early, which is why the witches were like, we need to look at other prospects here, because what you just did, no,
throws everything off.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also a weird thing too, because like they're saying it's that, but she's also saying that like, no, it's because the Duke wanted a son, and like, she wanted to like respect his wishes and all that, and so it's kind of hard to say like which one is it exactly. Like, did she really
want? Then at the end of this one, she goes, "You should have trusted me," or something like that.
That line. That so bothers me, because I mean, I'm
wait a minute, wait, hold on a minute.
No, I don't mean like they fucked up her character or anything like that. It's just like it bothers me, like, ooh, like I can't trust you now, like because of that line.
Well, okay, maybe we're talking about different points in the story. When she said to the Reverend Mother, it's weird because they're both Reverend Mothers, that you should have trusted me. I don't
think it's that specifically, but it's along those lines at the very end.
I think she was, because look, throughout the course of the film, it's revealed that the reason why the Emperor attacked Atreides and planned to have them exterminated was because of the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah,
she orchestrated all these things,
But but they did that because of her having a son, because they couldn't control them anymore.
Right, exactly. And I believe, what's it called? What Jessica is referring to is right before they're sent off from Caladan to Arrakis, that meeting that happens, and Jessica's trying to tell them like, hey, it doesn't have to be this way, and the witches are like, well, we've done all we can for you. even though they kind of have set this whole thing in motion that would put their entire house at risk. So from Jessica's point of view, the way that I read it is like, hey, this is what you get for trying to kill us. Like, you didn't need to do that. And I told you to have faith in him because he was going to be the one to do this stuff. Even though, to be fair, though, I don't think Jessica fully believed that until she drank the water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
well,
David?
What's
the part that bothered you?
Well, you guys are saying like you should have trusted me. You know, that Paul was the one. The line specifically for me, it was you should have joined my side or something like that, or like you should have been on my side. And like that's the part that bothers me because it's like, oh, okay, wait, hold on. Like, are you like?
Is she also getting revenge?
Yeah, like, are you saying this to like piss them off? Like, yeah, get revenge.
Well, she is also getting revenge,
you know, or
she wasn't going to get revenge at first, but I think that sentiment came out of her after the water. Like, she was not the same after she drank that water.
Mm-hmm.
She even questioned Paul at the beginning. What, you want revenge?
Mm-hmm.
That's not how your father would want things. So again, as a person, I think she fundamentally changed after that water situation happened.
Yeah.
And so who she becomes in the end, I think it makes more sense to why she would say about. And of course, the other mother, she's like, we don't take sides. You know that already.
Yeah.
So clearly there is something else at play here that is working against what the witches wanted out of this prophecy.
For sure.
So what is it? What do they want?
I know. Yeah, but that's why that line bothered me because it's like, oh, are you doing this for power and all that? Like, do you just want power over everyone and everything?
Yeah, she got power.
Yeah,
man.
she for sure.
I mean, let me tell you something. Look, I understand that throughout the course of the film, she does end up becoming a villain of sorts. My heart goes out to her because, of course, this wasn't really had all her intention. It just kind of happened to be that way, really, against her will. Nevertheless, that's what ends up happening, and she's fanning the flames of this to be genocide at some point. But look, sometimes you do get a little pleasure of seeing a bad bitch win, right? I mean, that shot as the film is closing of basically the Star Destroyers lifting off and going off into the sky to start off the Clone Wars, basically, and her just like standing there. It kind of reminded me of literal Palpatine at the end of Attack of the Clones, of them just watching, you know, the freaking ships go off into the sky and go fight the war. Like that literally was the scene begun the Clone Wars have. That was so funny to me. That we all were thinking the exact same moment. She says
the Holy War has begun.
Yeah.
She's so good. I love her.
And the thing, it's like, again, I don't like that genocide's about to happen. It's obviously very tragic and despicable, and Chani is ultimately right. At the same time, Jessica and Paul were horribly wronged, and you can't help but feel satisfaction in the justice that happens to the people who wronged them, particularly when they fucking wipe out the Harkonnens and steal the throne away from the Emperor. And then even in a way, the Bene Gesserit also lose here too, because I'm not even sure they're getting what they wanted out of this at all. It's like the Bene Gesserit lose, but Jessica wins.
Yeah.
So,
and then you also got to add the part of like the whole prophecy thing. Like once they have their Muad'Dib, their green paradise is on its way too, and it's like, does this lead to their green paradise too? Like, I kind of want them to have their green paradise, obviously not at the cost of like a genocide and everything, but like, I don't know if they have a stake on this too, you know. And there's something like in the books that they mentioned too. It's like, what is it about this planet? Like, how the fuck did it just become a desert? But there's still so much life to it. Like, how is it preserving this? Like, what is up with this planet? You know? And so those are just big questions they gotta like.
I agree with you, but I think also here's the part where it truly just becomes tragic, because ultimately, now I grant you a far less interesting story would have stopped here, but the logical jumping off point would have been at the end of this film. Whereas like they've achieved what they wanted, but then they still go ahead and do a war where they basically like, okay, this is a weird thing. The heroes of the story begin the film as the Rebel Alliance from Star Wars, but then when they end and they've toppled the Empire, they turn into the Fire Nation, and they're like, "Here, go spread our greatness across the galaxy."
Yeah. What's that? What's that?
A war in my name, yeah.
What's that movie that has the line of, you see yourself become the villain?
Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. You live, yeah. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Which the Emperor wanted to kill Paul, and like he would have died a hero had he kept going, but he didn't, and now he's becoming the villain.
But you got to be careful though, because as what Florence Pugh said, prophets only get stronger when they're killed. So either way, that's the thing. Like once you start down this path, this is where it gets a little bit dicey, because this might begin to bleed into territory that we might see in real life itself. But this is why religious fundamentalists fucking terrifying.
Yep.
Because we live on a planet whose main species history has been shaped by genocide after genocide, war after war, largely due to religious fundamentalism. That's it's fucking crazy. Scary.
It's so interesting that we are getting this movie at this point in time, or at least bringing back up again. But like the fact that it was made in the first place and the commentary that it has on it is so interesting. And
like, did Frank Herbert know the future? Like that.
I know.
This is how creepy like things.
Or is it just repeating itself?
Yeah.
That specific topic is something that I have thought about since we first learned it. I remember specifically in 7th grade during our history class, and I think it's my Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy. It's so scary. And again, like you said, the fact that it has shaped so much of the world, it's terrifying to think about it so deeply. But I think that, and then even like with this book specifically, or this story specifically, like, you have the story of why there was more books after this one, because he wrote this book for Paul to not be, or to be as a cautionary tale, but everybody loved Paul so much afterwards to kind of combat that and be like, no,
you people didn't get it. As a matter of fact, I just sent over a tweet I just saw while you were talking about that from Julia Louis-Dreyfus's more hilarious reactions from the show Veep. It reads, people who cheered on Paul Atreides in the first 2 movies watching Dune Messiah, and then the literal image is Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character saying, what the fuck, about the events that happened in Dune Messiah. Because look, here's the thing. In a way, I understand it, because I myself, while knowing and being terrified and seeing the signs of atrocities that are to come in the film, the filmmaking all comes together, and it's doing such a good job that you can't help but also get swept up in it too. Like, look, the sequence that I was referring to earlier on in the review, that like literally just like blew me away. Paul in the War Council, every word of that, give the man his Oscar right now.
Yep.
Give the man all the Oscars, because what happened there was beyond. You see how powerful this is? Everything is like collapsing.
You know what
around
that
you?
reminded me of? And you know what? The first time that I saw it, I didn't really pay attention to what he was saying until the second time. And then I really was like, holy shit, this guy is even what's her name?
Chani.
Jessica.
Oh, Jessica, yeah. She even
goes, slow down.
Yeah.
That is so scary. And that literally reminded me of Trump.
Although that's not fair. Trump is nowhere near that eloquent, or charismatic. The thing is, like, because the words that he used specifically, like when he was like screaming at the top of his lungs, like what did he say, that the hand of God bear witness or something, and just my jaw was on the floor. I was literally like back in my seat.
I was
just
literally
like
Chani, just being like, what the fuck is going on?
And then seeing everyone around him just like, yeah.
But like also though, like you know, everyone in everyone there is like praising him because he's his Deep, their Messiah and everything. But when he pulled out the ring, and you know, this is my father's signet ring, and then it cuts to
Josh Brolin, Gurney.
Yeah, Gurney, and he starts crying too. Like it's like he's not his Messiah, but like that is his Lord Duke, who like he literally would give his life to, and all that. And it's like that's how convincing. Like,
and Gurney the whole time is saying, use this.
Yeah.
Fuck this. Just use it to get what you need.
Yeah.
Which, look, I understand that, though. The problem is there was never a plan for what came after, because what came after is just a holy war across the galaxy. That's Hitler. That's the Fire Nation. That's like oops. We kind of went too far. That's why Chani was like, you don't know what you're doing here. Like, and but the thing is, she wants the same thing ultimately, which is liberation for her planet and her people, but at what cost?
Yeah.
At what cost? Like, what happened here was like, I can't believe what we were witness to.
Yeah.
Like, it literally transcended the screen, and we were like, again. And the thing I feel two ways about it, which is like, do you see more? It's just it's that powerful, that divine.
I feel like in that first viewing, it was very much like, I like this, but am I supposed to like it?
Yeah.
And then in that second viewing, you're just like, oh shit, like this is not
on second thought. On second thought, maybe we took a wrong turn.
This thing of like, I'm cheering, but like for what? Like
for war, for death, destruction. But the thing is, it's so intertwined with our main characters getting justice.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, when we cross to that third act,
every shot in that third act is like after he drinks the water thing.
The whole time I was thinking of Mother Talzin, the water of life. You know, it's called the same thing, by the way, in Star Wars, which makes you think,
how much did he get from this boat? Like, that's a
no, but honestly, yes, everything after he drank the water is like great, but to me, like everything after the Emperor like comes down, his spaceship was so fucking cool. I fucking loved it. Everything after that is like absolutely fantastic, because they're like, oh, just in time. They see the storm coming in. They're gonna take advantage. They're planning everything out, and you just kind of like. And I know you see that shot. I almost
We've
wish
seen this before.
Yeah, and like I almost wish they didn't put that shot in the trailer, the one with the worms coming in, because that would have been such a cool. I mean, obviously, I think it's like an obvious thing to like predict. But still, I would have loved to have seen that first in the theater, because that's so fucking cool. Just the whole battle and everything.
Dude, everything about that third act was like the peak power of cinema. You can't top that.
Mm-hmm.
It was perfection. Literally all of it. The sandstorm, the soldiers, the worms, the missiles, like it all came together. But then what I thought was even more impressive the second time around, the hand-to-hand blade combat between Butler and Chalamet, legendary.
Mm-hmm.
So legendary, they didn't put any music to it. It was just all sound design. It was just the sound of the blades and the fists hitting each other.
I would have been shitting bricks if I had to go up against Austin Butler in that moment.
And the thing is,
Are
like,
you joking?
I could not breathe.
Yeah.
That whole sequence. And dude, the air that everyone lets out when Paul gets stabbed first, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the first time in the whole film where you're like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
Did we delude ourselves into thinking this whole time? Was it all just a freaking coincidence? Because at that point you're thinking, I was like, oh shit, is this all about to fall apart right now? Because it's looking like it is. And then that doesn't quite happen. But still, by the way, what a hype man Stilgar is.
I love the
like,
memes that are coming out of it because of that. Paul, Breeze, Stilgar, as written.
As written. Jesus, man.
Also,
go ahead, David.
My favorite, not my favorite point, but I love the moment though. Right before the Emperor comes in, or like before the fight between Paul and Butler, he goes up to Chani and he goes, "I just want you to know, like, I will always love you for as long as I breathe." And then goes up to the Emperor and his daughter. And she's like, "I'll take her hand in marriage." And like, I loved Zendaya's acting in this moment because she was just like, "What? Like, the fuck? Okay."
Pardon.
And just she was really great. I mean, throughout the movie though, but that moment was like, "Oh wow, you're really selling it. This is great." Especially like the very last shot of her crying as she's seeing her people leaving the world and all that. That's so good.
Mm-hmm. Zendaya's character.
Oh, we haven't talked about Chani at all, but let me just say this. I love this this response that I saw on Twitter. I just won't watch Dune Messiah. I'm all for the rise and fuck you energy of his revenge. I don't need to see the tragic downfall. I mean, yes, we haven't talked about Chani, but like with Austin Butler and like with Timothée Chalamet, like with Javier Bardem, like with Rebecca Ferguson, movie star. Like, sensational. Like, this is the best performance of Zendaya.
Mm-hmm.
Not that she's not given great performances before, but like, wow. And let's take this time to also appreciate, Hans Zimmer already had an incredible score for the first one. Here, taking it up like 10 notches. There's a theme that plays consistently throughout the film, and it plays mostly when Paul and Chani are talking to each other. One of my favorite scenes, I mentioned this to you before in the chat, was early on in the film. They're on one of the sand dunes, and they're overlooking Stilgar riding a sandworm. This is the scene where they first kiss, and then the music comes in. That theme And Chani's great, and you know what? I think what also what elevates the film is the fact that they did change her, because in this film she's basically the lone dissenting voice. Like, she's the voice of reason the entire time. Like, this is bullshit. Let's just revere ourselves. Let's not depend on somebody else to control us in what we do. Kind of what ends up happening, and from what I understand in the book, that's not exactly how she's like.
Mm-hmm.
She's like fully devoted to him, and I don't know if she like fully believes in the prophecy, or she's just like blinded by her affection for him.
Who? Chani in the book?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
That's like the thing that I'm not too sure
Do they ever
about.
explicitly say she's not a fundamentalist? In the book, do they have a divide between the Northerners and the Southerners like they do in this film?
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're only in the first part.
Yeah. It's taking a while.
I know.
So that that's something that I would want to know. But I am so excited to see what happens after this with her character specifically. Because I do know like where it kind of happens, at least in the book. And if they go that route, how? Like, what's gonna happen? So yeah, that's I'm excited to see.
Did we miss anything?
Sandworms look good.
Sandworms.
Kind of cool. Anya Taylor-Joy playing the sister. That was interesting.
Oh yeah, the whole sister, and the fact that she speaks to the mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting element. Yeah.
I like the moment where it's she sees how they get the water of life, and she's trying to pay attention. She goes quiet. It's just like, I don't know why. I find it kind of funny, just because like it's like, hey, I gotta pay attention. Like, calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't catch that the first time actually.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second time I'm like, oh, she's telling the girl to shut up.
Yeah. I don't think so. Everything is, there's so much.
I know.
But I think we got it all.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see the next one now.
Yeah. Cool. One little cool detail: the Sara Dakar, basically the Emperor's army. I kind of like that they had like a knight sword, you know, and everything. That was a cool detail, that they're all just use different weapons and everything. So that was interesting. Other than that, I got nothing else.
Well, I guess in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and end it off there. But I also do want to say that Kyle and Peter did watch this with us as well, and they both loved it. I think we're unanimously adoring this film across the board. And if you've already seen this, see this 10 more times. If you haven't seen this, even if you already listened to this and you know what's going to happen, doesn't matter. Go watch it and experience it for yourself, because it truly is something to marvel at. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. Thank you both for being on here. Thank you all at home for watching and listening. Stay tuned every single week for more of our show, talking about all that's coming out of the world of movies and more. Stay under our spotlight, guys. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.